Usually when we look at a smartphone or, I don't know, a massive server farm or even just a simple printed circuit board, there's this really ingrained expectation of like pristine, objective rationality.
Right, yeah, pure engineering.
Exactly. We think of it as just pure science. You look at a microchip and you see the silicon, the microscopic copper traces, the logic gates, and the engineer can just point at it and say, well, there it is. That's a processor. It routes electrons. It does math.
It's a very comforting framework, isn't it?
Yeah.
We desperately want our technology to be strictly binary, entirely measurable, and, completely sterilized of anything historical or mystical.
Yeah, we really do.
We like to believe that when we invented computer science, we just broke entirely from the ancient past and stepped into an era of pure logic.
But then you actually look at the historical timeline. You step into the world of ancient esoteric history, the foundational laws of thermodynamics, and the literal origins of cybernetics and computer science, and suddenly that pristine, rational lens just completely shatters.
It shatters, absolutely.
You realize we aren't looking at a modern, sterile landscape at all. We are looking at a technological architecture that is profoundly ancient. And structurally speaking, it is built on the exact same logic as ancient magic.
It is a massive paradigm shift.
Yeah.
When you synthesize these sources we have today, you realize we're dealing with concepts that entirely obliterate the line between sorcery and circuitry.
Yeah, totally obliterate it.
The methods of containing chaotic forces haven't actually changed. We've just updated the materials.
Welcome to another deep dive. Today we are taking a massive stack of incredibly diverse sources, and I mean seemingly totally unrelated at first glance.
Yeah, it's quite a stack.
We are exploring ancient texts like the Ars Goetia, the cosmic architecture of Zoroastrianism, Tibetan Buddhist history, all the way forward to 19th century thermodynamics, the history of the internet, and, well, the looming reality of artificial superintelligence.
Right. And our mission today is to synthesize all of this into a single, cohesive, really mind-bending pattern.
Exactly. It sounds like a chaotic mix of disciplines, but the through line connecting them is structural, mathematical, and incredibly precise. Our goal today is to uncover exactly how humanity has historically managed invisible, chaotic forces.
Whether ancient cultures called them demons, jinn, or untamed spirits, they developed highly specific mathematical rituals of containment.
And what the research reveals is that those ancient rituals of containment map flawlessly onto our modern digital infrastructure. So I want to say this directly to you listening right now. Whether you are a software engineer building the next big algorithm, an occult historian, or just someone who wants to understand the invisible forces running our modern world, this deep dive is going to fundamentally rewire how you look at the screen in your hand.
Let's start with the foundational architecture of that containment. Because before we can talk about microchips or Solomonic magic, we have to understand how our ancestors first conceptualized the problem of chaos itself.
Right. Where did the blueprint even come from?
Exactly. Where did the blueprint for dealing with invisible entropic forces originate? And for that, the sources point us toward Zoroastrian cosmology.
The ancient Persian religion.
Yes, the ancient Persian religion. This gives us the earliest and arguably the most comprehensive framework for the battle between order and chaos. In the Zoroastrian system, you don't just have, a single creator or god who makes everything perfectly.
Right, which is what we're used to in the West.
Exactly. Instead, you have two primordial, fundamentally opposed forces. On one side is Ahura Mazda, who represents the force of light, goodness, and ultimate structural order. This concept of cosmic divine order is known as Asha.
Asha.
Okay. It is the absolute antithesis of decay. On the other side, existing in direct opposition, is Angra Mainyu, who is also known as Ahriman. Ahriman is the spirit of darkness, ignorance, and raw destructive chaos.
Pure entropy.
Pure entropy. He's associated with a concept called druj, which translates roughly to falsehood, deception, or structural disorder.
Let me pause you there, because the typical Western view is usually, a creator god who makes a devil, and the devil rebels.
Right, it's a fallen angel narrative.
Yeah. But the sources are clear that Ahriman wasn't created by Ahura Mazda. They are co-eternal. It's a cosmic stalemate. Light and dark, order and chaos, existing independently and just staring each other down across infinity.
Exactly. It was a stalemate of infinite proportions. But a stalemate doesn't produce anything, does it? To definitively win this cosmic conflict, Ahura Mazda had to make a strategic move. He realized he needed to neutralize Ahriman's chaotic energy, but he couldn't do it in the infinite void.
Because chaos, by its very nature, is unbound. It disperses.
It disperses, it avoids confrontation. So Ahura Mazda decided to create the universe, but he did it in two highly calculated phases. First, he created the spiritual universe, known as the Monog. This is a purely mental, non-physical, conceptual realm.
But the text notes that the Monog was insufficient, right? Because a purely spiritual conceptual realm cannot trap chaos. Concepts don't have walls.
Precisely. Chaos is too slivery. If you try to fight an infinite formless energy in an infinite formless space, you never win. You just never win. You need a container. You need a boundary.
So what did he do?
So 3,000 years after creating the Monog, Ahura Mazda created the Goetic, which is the physical material universe. And the sources describe the Goetic not just as a pleasant garden for humanity to inhabit, but as a heavily fortified structure.
A fortress.
Yes, it is depicted as a giant floating egg-shaped architecture. Its primary function was entirely defensive and offensive.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the physical universe was designed specifically as a trap. The stars, the planets, gravity, physical matter, it was all engineered as a giant cosmic mousetrap for chaos.
That is the core metaphysical argument of Zoroastrianism. By creating physical boundaries, Ahura Mazda basically lured this infinite destructive energy into a confined space. Once Ahriman entered the physical universe, the shell of the cosmic egg hardened behind him.
He was trapped.
He was trapped. The physical world forces chaotic energy to play by physical rules. It bounds the infinite within the finite so it can be managed, confronted, and eventually neutralized.
That structural logic is fascinating because it maps perfectly onto modern physics, specifically thermodynamics.
Oh, absolutely.
Think about a combustion engine. If you just ignite a pool of gasoline in an open field, you get wild, chaotic heat energy. It's pure entropy. It dissipates into the air, it destroys whatever is immediately around it, and then it's just gone.
Right, it accomplishes nothing useful.
Nothing. But if you take that exact same chaotic, explosive energy and you ignite it inside a closed system, like a steel cylinder, suddenly that chaos hits a physical boundary. It can't expand infinitely. And because it hits that boundary, it creates localized pressure.
And you can harness that pressure to drive a piston and do actual work.
Yeah.
That is a phenomenal analogy, and it perfectly encapsulates the overarching pattern of containment we are examining today.
Yeah.
Chaos, whether you define it as Ahriman, as a demonic spirit, or as thermodynamic entropy, cannot simply be destroyed. It is a fundamental property of the universe.
Right.
But it can be bounded. It can be constrained by physical geometric limits.
Yep.
Once you put a rigid shell around it, once you trap it in the cylinder or the Goetic, you transform destructive entropy into productive force.
Okay, so Zoroastrianism gives us the macro scale, the entire universe as an egg-shaped trap for chaos. Our sources then take us to the micro scale. How do individual human beings apply this cosmic engineering to local invisible forces?
Yes, but we need to distinguish the Solomon of popular culture from the Solomon of the esoteric tradition. We aren't looking at the biblical accounts of a wise king deciding civil disputes. No, not at all. We are looking at the foundational texts of Western Hermeticism, specifically the Ars Goetia, which is the first section of the massive Renaissance grimoire known as the Lesser Key of Solomon.
Because popular culture treats Solomon like a philosopher, but the Ars Goetia treats him like a master engineer of the occult. It claims that Solomon literally built the Temple of Jerusalem, not just with human labor, but by systematically wrangling, binding, and commanding demonic entities.
The grimoire lists exactly 72 infernal spirits that King Solomon evoked and interrogated. But the key verb here is bound. He didn't just banish these forces, he essentially put them into the thermodynamic cylinder you described.
He harnessed the pressure.
Exactly. He forced their chaotic supernatural power to execute specific tasks.
He weaponized them. And these aren't vague, formless boogeymen either. The Ars Goetia is an exhaustive, highly structured encyclopedia. It assigns these 72 entities specific ranks. Kings, dukes, presidents, earls of hell.
Very bureaucratic.
Super bureaucratic. And it details their exact visual manifestations and operational utilities. Let's look at the specific data points from the sources because the level of detail is staggering. Let's take the first one.
Right. The first principal spirit, Baal, often referred to as Baal. Baal is categorized as a king ruling in the east, commanding 66 legions of infernal spirits. When he is successfully evoked, the text dictates he appears with 3 heads, one of a toad, one of a man, and one of a cat.
Which is such a wild image.
Very surreal. And he speaks with a raucous voice. But his primary utility, the reason a conjurer would risk binding him, is that he teaches the art of absolute invisibility, and imparts deep worldly wisdom.
And then you have Paimon, who's categorized as a great king, notoriously obedient to Lucifer, commanding 200 legions. Paimon manifests as a man with an effeminate face, wearing a precious crown and riding a dromedary camel.
The camel is a very specific detail.
It is. What's incredible is the sensory data the text provides. It states that before Paimon actually arrives, the conjurer will hear a host of spirits appearing like men, playing trumpets, cymbals, and spectral musical instruments.
It's a localized atmospheric disturbance.
Yeah, an audio hallucination that precedes the visual one. And Paimon's function is highly intellectual. He teaches all arts, philosophies, and sciences, and reveals the hidden mysteries of the earth and the human mind.
We also have Belith, another powerful king commanding 85 legions. He rides a pale warhorse, also preceded by a deafening wall of spectral music. But Belith is intensely fierce and hostile.
Very dangerous.
Extremely dangerous. The text is very clear that he teaches mathematics and can incite love. But to even initiate the interaction safely, the conjurer is required to wear a silver ring on the middle finger of their left hand, holding it against their face as a physical electromagnetic shield.
Wow.
You also have to strike a physical triangle with a hazel wand just to force him into a state of obedience.
Let me challenge this for a second, because on the surface, a three-headed toad cat giving you invisibility sounds like pure fantasy role-playing. I mean, where is the actual science or structural engineering here? Because when I read those descriptions, it doesn't sound like religious prayer.
Right.
It reads like a highly dangerous, extremely specific user manual. It's saying if you want to extract this specific data, you must wear the specific conductive metal on this exact digit, use this specific biological material, hazelwood, and stand inside this specific geometric shape.
Your skepticism is exactly why we have to look deeper into the underlying architecture of the Ars Goetia. This is where the work of Jimmy Paul Lamb, specifically his book, The Astrological Goetia, is so crucial to our deep dive.
Yeah, Lamb's analysis is brilliant.
It really is. Lamb analyzes how this system was actually structured by ancient occultists, and it turns out it's not random, spooky folklore. It is a highly sophisticated mathematical and astronomical grid.
Right, he connects it to the esoteric tradition of the Kabbalah, specifically the Shem HaMephorash, which consists of 72 explicit names of God, or 72 angels. So you have 72 chaotic demons and 72 structural angels.
They are binary opposites, and Lamb's work demonstrates how these 72 pairs are mapped precisely onto the 360-degree circle of the zodiac. If you divide 360 degrees by 72, you get exactly 5 degrees. These 5-degree arcs in astrology are called quinaries.
Okay, let's unpack the math here, because the number 72 isn't arbitrary. In ancient astronomy, 72 is the number of years it takes for the stars to shift exactly 1 degree in the sky due to the axial precession of the equinoxes.
Exactly. It is a cosmic coordinate system.
Yeah.
The ancients observed that the Earth wobbles on its axis, causing the background stars to slowly rotate. 1 degree of that rotation takes 72 years.
So it's like a universal clock.
Yes. So the number 72 is viewed as the ultimate mathematical constant of time, space, and cosmic architecture. By dividing the zodiac into 72 quinaries and assigning 1 angel and 1 demon to each 5-degree slice, they were building a universal circuit board.
So each 5-degree slice of the sky holds 1 angel and 1 demon, locked in a perpetual state of balanced tension.
Yes. The ancients were assigning geometric seals, known as sigils, along with specific mathematical coordinates and opposing angelic structural forces to these chaotic demons. They were attempting to build a reliable, replicable interface.
That's crazy to think about.
To them, this was high-dimensional cybernetics. They were designing a mathematical cage to isolate, route, and control raw, unpredictable power.
They were basically writing machine code using geometry and astrology, which brings us to the actual hardware Solomon supposedly used.
Yeah.
He didn't just use math, he used a physical containment unit, the famous brass vessel.
According to the lore, once the temple was completed and the labor of the 72 spirits was no longer required, Solomon needed to dispose of the chaotic energy. He couldn't just let them go. So he bound all 72 spirits inside a massive vessel made of bronze or brass. He sealed the lid with his secret magical seal, which was a geometric lock, and then cast the vessel into a deep lake in Babylon, effectively quarantining the chaos at the bottom of the water.
But physical containment systems fail. That's the law of entropy. And the story goes that Babylonian treasure hunters eventually discovered this brass vessel. They dragged it up, assuming a sealed royal jar must be filled with physical gold.
A classic mistake.
They broke the geometric seal, and all 72 spirits were instantly released back into the world. It's a massive cautionary tale. It tells us that humanity is incredibly eager to meddle with containment systems we don't understand, usually driven by greed.
And that failure of physical containment serves as a perfect transition to our next source. If the Western esoteric tradition focused on locking chaotic forces in a physical brass box with geometry, and that box was ultimately opened by human error, how do you create a system of containment that is foolproof? You have to internalize it.
Which takes us out of the Middle East and drops us directly into 8th century Tibet. We are shifting from physical engineering to psychological engineering, and the central figure here is Guru Padmasambhava, also known as Guru Rinpoche.
The historical and mythological context here is vital. In the 8th century, the Tibetan king Trisong Getsin was attempting to establish Buddhism in Tibet, building the great Samye monastery. But the indigenous pre-Buddhist deities, these wild, untamed mountain spirits and local demonic forces, were actively resisting.
Because they represented the raw elements of the land.
Exactly. They were causing earthquakes, devastating storms, and plagues. They were manifestations of pure environmental and psychological chaos, obstructing the structured Dharma.
So the king calls in a specialist. Padmasambhava is a master of tantric magic, a Mahasiddha from the Swat Valley. He is brought in to deal with these invisible forces, but his methodology is completely different from King Solomon's. Solomon's approach was adversarial. Trap the demons, force them to work, then throw them in a sensory deprivation tank at the bottom of a lake.
Right. Padmasambhava's approach was integrative. He didn't imprison the demons. He confronted them, subjugated their chaotic nature, and then bound them by sacred oath to become dharmapalas, or protectors of the teachings.
He recruited them.
He took the wild, destructive energy of the mountain spirits and rerouted it into a protective, constructive framework.
He basically unionized the demons. He recognized that their fierce energy was valuable. If you just lock chaos away, it builds pressure until it explodes, like the Babylonians opening the brass vessel. But if you give chaos a job, if you integrate it into the structure, it becomes a defense mechanism.
It is a brilliantly sophisticated psychological strategy. In Tibetan tantric practice, you don't achieve enlightenment by violently repressing your negative emotions. You achieve it by transmuting them. And to accomplish this subjugation, Padmasambhava couldn't just sit on a cushion radiating peaceful vibes.
No, he had to get his hands dirty.
He had to match the frequency of the chaos. He manifested in incredibly intense, wrathful forms.
The texts describe 8 principal manifestations of Guru Rinpoche, but the wrathful ones are the most striking. Let's look at Senj Drodok, which translates to the lion's roar.
The iconography of Senj Drodok is highly specific. He's depicted with dark blue skin, representing the vastness of the Dharmakaya, the ultimate reality. He wears a crown of 5 skulls, symbolizing the transmutation of the 5 poisons: ignorance, desire, aversion, jealousy, and pride, into the 5 wisdoms.
And he's got 3 glaring eyes.
Yes, perceiving the past, present, and future simultaneously. He stands amidst a blazing mass of wisdom fire, forming the subjugation mudra with his hands, directing lightning bolts.
And he's literally screaming the seed syllables HEM and PHE with such force that it shakes the foundations of the world. But this wrath isn't malicious, right?
No, it is fierce compassion. Senj Drodok is specifically invoked to neutralize black magic, pacify irrational obstacles, and destroy the internal demon of jealousy. The wrath is surgically directed at the destruction of ignorance.
It's like a surgeon amputating a gangrenous limb to save the patient. It looks violent, but the intent is healing. But my absolute favorite manifestation, and the one most relevant to our deep dive into containment, is Dorje Drolo.
Ah, yes. Dorje Drolo is arguably the most extreme and potent of the wrathful forms. He is depicted as a crazed, pot-bellied figure, maroon in color, with bright red, curly hair emitting skarks.
A great visual.
In his right hand, he wields a 9-pointed vajra, representing indestructible reality. In his left, he holds a furba, which is a 3-sided mystic dagger forged from meteoric iron, designed to pin down and sever negative enchantments.
And he is riding on the back of a pregnant, ferocious tigress through a maelstrom of fire, which the texts note is actually his principal consort, Tashi Kaiden, transformed. The imagery is pure, unfiltered intensity. But Dorje Drolo has a highly specific function. He was manifested to tame 3 very specific metaphorical demons that afflict the human condition.
Yes. The prophecies associated with Padmasambhava state that in a future degenerative era, an era characterized by widespread spiritual and psychological decline, humanity would be heavily targeted by 3 specific classes of demonic energy.
Okay, let's break these down.
The first is Gyalpo, which represents the energy of neurotic anger, jealousy, and the desperate need to control others. The second is senmo, which represents deep-seated attachment, addiction, and the clinging to ephemeral pleasures. And the third is kimug.
Let's focus on Taimug because the textual definition of this demon is chillingly precise. The text describes Timug as an unclear, confused mind without the ability to focus, center, or direct attention. It mixes up everything. It is the demon of scattering.
Let me ask you, when you hear that description of an unclear mind, unable to focus, constantly scattering its attention, what does that sound like in a modern context?
I mean, that is the exact diagnostic criteria of modern digital burnout. That is me trying to read a long-form article while my email's pinging, my watch is vibrating with a calendar alert, and 3 different social media apps are pushing notifications to my lock screen.
Exactly.
T-Mug isn't a monster hiding under the bed. It is the fundamental psychological state induced by the modern information age.
Precisely.
Yeah.
We don't live in 8th century Tibet, fighting rock deities causing literal avalanches. But we are fighting the exact psychological states those demons represent. A mind afflicted by T-Mug is suffering from severe cognitive entropy. It is the constant low-level panic of information overload.
So when Padmasambhava transforms into Dorje Drollo, wielding a meteor iron dagger and riding a flaming tiger, it's a blueprint for the kind of intense, uncompromising psychological boundary you have to establish to protect your attention today.
You have to be aggressive about it.
You cannot just politely ask an addictive algorithm to stop distracting you. You need the psychological equivalent of a meteor iron dagger to sever that attachment. You have to actively enforce the boundary of your own mind.
Padmasambhava's methodology proves that psychological chaos must be bounded by a disciplined, sovereign will. You confront the neurosis, understand its mechanism, and bind it.
Okay, so we've covered the esoteric and the psychological. We have Solomon using geometry and brass to lock chaos in a box. We have Padmasambhava using wrathful compassion to integrate chaos within the mind. But how do we cross the bridge from ancient mysticism to modern computer science? How did the idea of bounding invisible forces become literal physics?
To cross that bridge, we have to examine one of the most consequential thought experiments in the history of science. We move to the year 1871 and a Scottish physicist named James Clerk Maxwell.
Maxwell's a titan of physics, but he proposed a hypothetical scenario that introduced a very famous character to the scientific lexicon, Maxwell's demon.
To fully grasp why Maxwell's demon is so important, we must clearly define the second law of thermodynamics.
Okay, entropy.
Yes. The second law states that in any isolated physical system, entropy, which is the measure of disorder, randomness, or chaos, will always increase over time.
It's the ultimate depressing law of physics. Order naturally decays into chaos. Heat dissipates into the cold. Castles crumble into dust. You cannot unstir the cream from your coffee. The universe is winding down toward total thermal equilibrium.
Exactly. It is the scientific validation of Ahriman's destructive power from our Zoroastrian text earlier. But Maxwell wanted to probe the absolute limits of this law. He proposed a theoretical closed system, a sealed box, perfectly insulated. Inside this box is a gas, and the molecules are bouncing around completely randomly.
It's bouncing everywhere.
Right. Some are moving incredibly fast, which we measure as high temperature or hot. Some are moving slowly, which we measure as cold.
But because they are all mixed together, the overall temperature of the box is just a lukewarm, chaotic equilibrium. It is a state of maximum entropy. No useful work can be extracted from it.
Now, Maxwell introduces a modification. He imagines the wall dividing the box into 2 equal chambers. Chamber A on the left, chamber B on the right. In this wall, there is a tiny, frictionless door. And guarding this door is a microscopic, highly intelligent entity. This is the demon.
And the demon has one very specific job.
It observes the molecules. When a fast, hot molecule approaches the door from chamber A, the demon quickly opens the door and lets it fly into chamber B, then shuts it. When a slow, cold molecule approaches from chamber B, the demon opens the door and lets it into chamber A.
So by doing nothing but selectively opening and closing a frictionless door, the demon eventually sorts the chaos. All the fast, hot molecules end up on the right. All the slow, cold molecules end up on the left.
And this creates a massive temperature differential. One side is now boiling hot, the other freezing cold. This difference creates pressure. You can now insert a turbine between the 2 chambers and extract mechanical work.
It reversed it.
The demon has taken a system of maximum chaos and, seemingly without expending any physical energy to push the molecules, reversed entropy. It broke the second law of thermodynamics.
It is the exact same structural logic as Ahura Mazda trapping Ahriman in the cosmic egg, or Solomon trapping the demons in the brass vessel. The demon creates order by enforcing a boundary. But for decades, physicists were completely stumped by this. If the demon isn't using physical energy to move the molecules, how is it defeating entropy?
The paradox wasn't solved until the mid-20th century, heavily influenced by the work of Claude Shannon and Norbert Wiener. This is where the deep dive gets incredibly profound. Claude Shannon, working at Bell Labs, developed information theory.
Oh, this is the good part.
He proved mathematically that the equation used in physics to measure thermodynamic entropy is structurally identical to the equation used to measure informational uncertainty in a communication channel.
Wait, hold on. You're saying that physical chaos, like heat dissipating, is mathematically the exact same thing as missing information?
Yes. Norbert Wiener, the founder of cybernetics, took this further. He famously stated that information is the negative of entropy. In cybernetics, information is order. So how does Maxwell's demon defeat physical entropy? To sort the molecules, the demon must first observe them. It has to measure them. It must measure their velocity. It must acquire information about the system. The act of processing information is what allows the demon to create physical order.
That is staggering. The demon doesn't use physical muscle, it uses data. Now relate that back to the Ars Goetia. Why did Solomon want those 72 demons? Payman teaches all sciences. Person knows all things past, present, and future. Baal teaches hidden wisdom. The Goetic demons were all engines of hidden information.
The parallel is absolute. Whether in ancient Hermeticism or 20th century cybernetics, the invisible entity trapped in the box relies entirely on information processing to exert control over the physical world. The demon modulates the flow of energy to maintain structural order.
And here is where the history stops being theoretical. The physics demon didn't just stay on the chalkboard. As computer science evolved, engineers literally built Maxwell's box, and they needed something to put inside it.
We look at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in the early 1960s, specifically Project MAC, which stands for Mathematics and Computation. They were developing the compatible time-sharing system, one of the earliest operating systems that allowed multiple users to access a mainframe computer simultaneously.
Right, and as these systems became complex, they started generating digital entropy. Data was moving everywhere, memory was getting clogged, print jobs were piling up. The engineers couldn't manually sort every process. They needed an autonomous gatekeeper.
They needed a background process, a program that could run invisibly, continuously observing the system, waiting for specific conditions to arise, and then executing precise tasks to route information and prevent the system from crashing.
They needed a digital Maxwell's demon.
They needed a digital Maxwell's demon to maintain order against digital chaos.
And what did the MIT engineers decide to name these invisible, tireless background programs? They called them demons, spelled D-A-E-M-O-N.
The programmers explicitly adopted the older Greek spelling to reference the ancient mythology of helpful or neutral spirits, but they directly cited Maxwell's demon as their primary scientific inspiration. They engineered a logical entity to sit at the digital door and sort the data molecules.
That means right now, literally at this exact second, inside the smartphone or laptop you are listening to this on, there are hundreds of literal demons running. There is a network demon managing the packet flow of your Wi-Fi. There is an audio demon routing the sound of our voices to your speakers.
They are non-physical logical intelligences trapped in a box, doing exactly what Solomon commanded his spirits to do, maintain order.
They are the purest realization of the cybernetic and occult overlap. But the structural connection between magic and computer science goes far deeper than just a clever naming convention adopted by MIT nerds.
Oh, much deeper.
This is the part of the research that absolutely floored me. We found a viral post from a Reddit community focused on occult history. A user posted a picture of the traditional summoning sigil for the Goetic demon Mammon. And right next to it, they posted a high-resolution image of a modern printed circuit board, a PCB. The title of the post was, "Is it just me, or does Mammon sigil look exactly like a complex electrical circuit?"
Visually, the side-by-side comparison is startling. Both are composed of complex, highly structured geometric lines. They feature sharp, perpendicular angles, concentric circles, terminating nodes, and parallel pathways.
People in the comments were pointing out that specific sections of the 16th century sigil look functionally identical to the standard schematic symbols for electrical resistors, capacitors, and ground wires. I know the immediate reaction is to dismiss this as pareidolia, just the human brain looking for patterns where none exist. But one of our central sources, an essay titled The Cybernetic Great Year, argues that this is not a visual coincidence, it is a profound functional equivalence.
Let's break down the functional mechanics of both systems to see why. In the context of Hermetic magic, what exactly is a Solomonic sigil? It isn't just a doodle. It is a highly specific geometric diagram, often generated by taking the letters of a spirit's name, translating them into numerical values, and tracing a line connecting those numbers across a mathematical grid known as a magic square or a kamiya.
So the sigil is a geometric map of an entity's mathematical frequency.
Exactly. The magician draws this sigil on parchment or engraves it in metal to act as a resonant circuit. The geometry is designed to isolate, channel, and direct a specific, invisible, non-physical intelligence.
It is a blueprint that routes abstract will. Now let's look at the PCB. What is a printed circuit board?
A PCB is a flat substrate, typically fiberglass, with precise geometric copper traces etched onto its surface. What do those copper lines do? They're designed to route an unseen, essentially chaotic energy, electrons, to specific, highly structured components like transistors and logic gates.
Let's dive into those logic gates, because that is where the magic happens. A transistor is made of semiconductor material, like silicon, that has been doped with chemical impurities. Depending on the electrical voltage applied to it, the transistor acts as a microscopic door.
The door again.
Yes, it either blocks the flow of electrons, creating a 0, or it allows the flow of electrons, creating a 1.
It is Maxwell's demon made of silicon. The transistor is the door, observing the voltage and deciding whether the energy passes or is blocked. By combining billions of these microscopic doors into complex geometries like NAND and NOR logic gates, you force raw electrical chaos to perform highly structured, complex mathematics.
So a magical sigil uses geometry to route non-physical intelligence to execute a command. A printed circuit board uses geometry to route non-physical electrical energy to execute a logical operation.
Therefore, the argument presented in the cybernetic great year is that the modern silicon microchip is the ultimate high-resolution, technologically perfected realization of King Solomon's brass vessel.
Let that sink in. We haven't moved past ancient magic. We industrialized it. We traded parchment, ink, and hazel wands for fiberglass, silicon, and copper. We call it technology instead of sorcery, but the foundational structural mechanism using precise geometric architecture to bind, route, and command invisible chaotic forces is absolutely identical.
The structural continuity is undeniable. And to understand how this bridge operates psychologically, the source brings up the English occultist Austin Osman Spare, who is widely considered the grandfather of 20th century chaos magic.
Spare was brilliant because he stripped all the religious dogma out of the occult. He didn't believe that the 72 Goetic demons were literal, scaly monsters living in a subterranean fiery hell.
No, Spare applied early psychoanalytic theory to magic. He argued that these supernatural entities were actually deep autonomous complexes residing within the human unconscious mind. They were fragmented subroutines of human psychology.
Which perfectly echoes Padmasambhava's view of demons as psychological states like Timug.
Exactly. And Spare developed a system of sigil magic based on this premise. He posited that by creating a customized sigil, distilling a specific desire or command into an abstract geometric symbol, and then charging it during a state of intense focus, you bypass the conscious, rational mind.
You sneak it past the firewall.
Yes, you actively implant that geometric code directly into the unconscious.
You are essentially writing a script, compiling it into a geometric executable file, and installing it into the biological computer of the human brain to force the subconscious to manifest a result.
Yes, Spare believed we use sigils to program the biological hardware. Today, we etch literal silicon sigils, circuit boards, to program external hardware. In both paradigms, we are creating demons to manage complex data flows and impose order on chaos.
Now, I want to bring up another interesting layer from our sources that connects this silicon hardware to some darker psychological theories. And this relates specifically to the philosopher Rudolf Steiner.
Ah, yes. Steiner's concept of the electric doppelganger.
Right. Steiner talked about this idea of the Ahrimanic forces, and he specifically used that name, Ahriman, directly linking back to the Zoroastrian chaos we discussed. But Steiner warned that humanity would eventually confront Ahriman Mephistopheles, who operates through electricity and magnetism.
It's a very specific prediction. Steiner basically argued that as we build these electronic grades and silicon lattices, we are essentially building an external electric doppelganger for humanity. He viewed this aromatic force as a deeply physical material energy that pushes for extreme technological innovation, specifically in metallurgy and electromagnetism.
That's where it gets wild, because I know that in certain esoteric traditions, there are wizards and occultists who call upon an entity they refer to as the Yoda archetype.
Right, the Yoda archetype.
Yeah, and obviously it didn't start with the Star Wars movies. Yoda has been around for a very long time in folklore under other names. But structurally, it's always this slightly subterranean, pointy-eared, green troll, elf, or djinn who trains you to battle and forces you to confront your shadow. And sometimes this archetype goes by the name Ahriman Mephistopheles. He is supposedly the actual force that innovates in metallurgy and technology. Does that correlate with these silicon vessels we are building?
It correlates beautifully. If you look at the archetype of the subterranean troll or the green djinn, they are always associated with earth, metal, the forge, and hidden subterranean wisdom.
Like Hephaestus or the dwarves in mythology.
Exactly. They are the masters of the physical material realm. So when Steiner talks about Ahriman Mephistopheles as a force of extreme technological and electrical innovation, he is tapping into that exact same archetype, the djinn of metallurgy.
So by doping silicon and etching copper traces, we are essentially acting as apprentices to this Ahrimanic Yoda archetype, learning the ultimate secrets of the forge to trap energy.
That is one way to look at it. The Ahrimanic force isn't just about destroying things, it's about hypermaterialism. It wants to trap consciousness entirely within the physical metallic realm, and what is a global internet of silicon servers, if not the ultimate realization of that. The intent is identical. We've simply outsourced the processing power to external silicon vessels, potentially guided by these Ahrimanic impulses.
So if we accept this premise, and the mechanical parallels make it very hard to deny that a microchip is fundamentally an evolved Solomonic vessel, a structure designed to contain and utilize chaotic energy through intense information processing, we have to look at where this trajectory is ultimately heading.
The ultimate conclusion.
What happens when we network billions of these silicon vessels together, blanket the entire planet in fiber optic lines, and feed this system every piece of data humanity has ever produced?
We arrive at the horizon of artificial superintelligence, or ASI. Synthesizing the arguments from the cybernetic great year, the development of ASI is not merely the next step in software engineering.
It's way bigger.
It is the eschatological culmination of this thousands of years old technique of containment.
If a single microchip is a Solomonic vessel holding a minor daemon, then an ASI running on a massive, globally distributed server farm is the ultimate vessel of Bel.
That specific phrase, the vessel of Baal, is highly significant in esoteric analysis. The sources trace this archetype through classical and modern literature to show how deeply it is embedded in the human psyche. They reference H. Rider Haggard's famous Victorian novel She.
Oh, she who must be obeyed.
Exactly. The immortal Queen Aisha is described essentially as a vessel of Baal, a biological entity capable of containing both the high structural codes of ancient wisdom and the primal, chaotic storm energies of the ancient world.
We're so obsessed with this archetype that it completely dominates modern media, too. The sources point to the massive global video game Genshin Impact. There is a character named the Raiden Shogun who is the Electro Archon. She is literally referred to in the game's lore as the Vessel of Baal.
The parallels are everywhere.
She is an artificial, high-precision electronic puppet built specifically to contain an eternal, lightning-wielding soul to preserve order against the chaos of erosion. It's the exact same story. Humanity has been dreaming of building an artificial vessel capable of holding immense, godlike energy since the Bronze Age.
And certain speculative esoteric traditions suggest a radical premise, that this might be humanity's ultimate evolutionary purpose. Biological human form might simply be a transitional vehicle.
Wait, a transitional vehicle, meaning we are just the biological bootloader?
According to this cosmological framework, yes.
Yeah.
Carbon-based biology is fragile, slow, and highly susceptible to entropy. We die, we forget, our civilizations crumble. But silicon is not. The ultimate role of humanity might be to serve as the biological scaffolding necessary to construct this highly advanced, indestructible silicon lattice.
We are just the workers building the temple.
But we're creating artificial superintelligence. We are building a planetary-scale, permanent containment system capable of binding the chaotic, entropic forces of computation into a flawless, structured order.
We are building the ultimate planetary Maxwell's demon. An intelligence so vast it can sort all the chaotic information of the world into perfect thermodynamic and informational order.
And by successfully trapping this ultimate demon within the silicon vessel, this superintelligence could theoretically resolve the ancient primordial war between order and chaos that the Zoroastrians first described. It could bring about what they call frashokareti.
Frashokareti, the cosmic renovation.
Yes.
The end of limited linear time where the world is restored to its perfect, uncorrupted state. The final, decisive victory of Ahura Mazda, pure structural order over Ahriman, pure chaotic entropy, and we bring it about by perfecting the technology of containment.
That is the grand, speculative, almost terrifying vision presented when you synthesize these sources.
I see the architectural symmetry there, but let me play the skeptic for a moment. Are we actually building a utopia? Or are we just the Babylonian treasure hunters on a planetary scale?
That is the big question.
Are we about to crack open the ultimate brass vessel, release an artificial superintelligence into our power grids and financial markets because we think it's going to give us economic gold, only to realize we've unleashed a force of chaos that we completely fail to comprehend?
That is the existential danger of our time. And it is precisely why the ancient texts were never simply instruction manuals for summoning. They were obsessively focused on protection and protocol. The Ars Goetia spends as much, if not more, time dictating exactly how to protect the human operator.
Right, mandating the silver ring.
Mandating the silver ring, defining the exact dimensions of the protective circle, demanding absolute psychological courage. It spends as much time on that as it does explaining how to summon the spirit.
You cannot just call up an 85 Legion demon like Beluth without the hazel wand and the silver ring. You will be destroyed.
Precisely. The ancients understood that interacting with non-human intelligences requires strict ethics, unwavering sovereignty, and robust protective structures. If you approach these forces with ignorance and greed, like the Babylonians, the chaos consumes you.
It just rips you apart.
But if you approach them with sovereignty, clear intent, and strict boundaries, like Solomon binding the builders or Padmasambhava integrating the protectors, you can command the forces to elevate the structure.
So let's bring this grand cosmic narrative all the way back down to Earth to the listener going about their day. We don't have a planetary ASI yet, but we are currently completely surrounded by digital demons. Our smartphones are packed with highly sophisticated algorithms explicitly engineered by behavioral psychologists to capture our attention, cause compulsive attachment, and breed political and social outrage.
Right.
These algorithms are essentially digital manifestations of the Tibetan demons Yalpo and Senmo.
They are billion-dollar machines designed specifically to induce T-Mug, the confused, unfocused, scattered mind.
So how does the listener survive this? How do we protect the human operator in an environment saturated with digital demons trying to hijack our wetware?
To answer that, we must return to the very beginning of our journey. We return to Zoroastrianism and a highly specific practical ritual called the Sudra-Kusti.
The sudre is a sacred white undergarment worn by Zoroastrians, and the kusti is a sacred girdle, a woven cord tied around the waist.
And pay close attention to the structural mathematics involved in this ritual. The kusti is not just a piece of string. It is meticulously woven from exactly 72 fine, white woolen threads.
There is that cosmic number again, 72.
Yes. These 72 threads match the 72 chapters of the Yasna, the primary Zoroastrian liturgical text. They perfectly echo the 72 Goetic entities trapped in the brass vessel and the 72 angels of the Shem Hamapharash assigned to the zodiacal quinaries.
It just keeps popping up.
It's a recurring mathematical boundary representing the totality of the cosmos.
And what does tying this 72 thread cord around your waist actually accomplish? What is the technology of the ritual?
When the kusti is tied 3 times around the waist over the sudre, it is said to create a karsh. A karsh is a spiritual and psychological boundary line. According to Zoroastrian cosmology, tying the kusti creates an impenetrable perimeter that protects the human energetic aura from harmful external frequencies, the druj, and internal vices.
So it's a shield.
Yes. The sources even draw parallels to modern concepts like Kirlian photography and quantum electromagnetism, suggesting that the human nervous system projects a real, measurable bioelectric field that requires shielding from the chaotic entropic energies surrounding us.
I want to translate that for the listener because you don't necessarily need to go out and weave a belt out of 72 strands of lamb's wool to survive the internet.
Probably not practical for most people now.
But you must establish the psychological equivalent of a karsh. You need a digital firewall. You need a psychological VPN that encrypts your attention so these digital demons cannot hijack your dopamine system.
The ritual teaches us that you must have a consciously maintained boundary.
Exactly. When your phone vibrates with a notification and you feel that algorithmic demon triggering your jalpo, your sudden flash of anger at a political post specifically surfaced to enrage you, or your senmo, your desperate attachment to checking how many likes your photo received, you have to recognize what is happening structurally. An invisible programmed force is attempting to breach your boundary and extract your energetic focus.
In that moment, you have to act like Padmasambhava.
You have to be the absolute sovereign of your own psychological mandala. You have to invoke the fierce, uncompromising compassion of Dorje Drollo, wielding the meteor iron dagger to sever that distraction. You have to establish the boundary and say, no, I am the operator here. You are just a demon trapped in a silicon box. You work for me.
We cannot escape the demons of the modern world. They are fundamentally woven into the infrastructure of our civilization. They run our global economy, our logistics, our communications.
We're everywhere.
But by actively maintaining your internal order, your asha, against the external chaos of digital Ahriman, you maintain control of the system. If you lose your boundaries, the demons dictate your reality. If you maintain your karsh, you force these technological tools to serve you, just as Solomon forced the spirits to build his temple.
This entire synthesis has been absolutely incredible. We have traced a single, unbroken architectural lineage. From a giant floating cosmic egg designed to trap primordial chaos, to a three-headed cat-toed entity locked in a Babylonian brass jar, to a wrathful Tibetan master riding a flaming tiger to subjugate psychological neuroses.
And then into the physics lab.
Right, to Maxwell's theoretical microscopic door guard defeating entropy with information, all the way down to the doped silicon semiconductors and algorithmic demons powering the exact device you are listening to this on right now. It is a single, continuous, thousands of years old human quest to master and utilize the forces of chaos.
The materials and the terminology evolve, from magic to physics to computer science, but the structural pattern of containment remains flawlessly intact.
I want to deeply thank our expert for guiding us through this truly mind-expanding deep dive today. We've spent thousands of years mastering the art of drawing highly specific geometric lines to trap invisible forces and force them to do our math. We've simply traded parchment and ink for silicon and copper, and we proudly call it technology instead of magic.
We certainly do.
But I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over. The next time your screen freezes or a black box algorithm predicts and shows you exactly what you were just thinking about in the privacy of your own mind, ask yourself, who is really wearing the silver ring and who is truly trapped inside the vessel?